Awesome. So we're gonna have a nice show with us today. We're gonna start with a discussion with Ido from the daily.dev.
What are we discussing?
Yeah, so it's funny. I met Ido kind of. I'm just gonna join kind of when I'm finished this stupid anecdote. I'm gonna let him in. I met Ido in a conference in Tel Aviv, and we started to talk. I told him about Winglang, and he already knew you guys, but I was talking to him about Winglang, and he was telling me, so what are you different from Pulumi? And so I looked at him and said, you guys using Pulumi? What are you doing with it? And then he started telling me the entire stuff he's doing with it. And I said, oh my God, man, come to the Wingley show. Let's talk, man. And he said, yeah, sure, I don't mind. It's what time is it? I told him, it's 9 p.m. Israeli time. I said, oh. But he still kind of was very kind of, he wanted to join, and I really want to talk to him about how they're using Pulumi. And I felt great about this. I felt great about that. I got him. He asked me about competitor. I brought him into the show. That was, but then kind of 3 months went through, and from that time, I've become a daily.dev user. So I'm using daily.dev. It says on a daily basis. It's basically when I open my tabs, I can see content, and it's there's something addictive about this, and I like it. And it's I'm not reading a lot of developers. I'm not that kind of person that reads a lot of developer articles, but I'm exposed to what's talking right now, so I'm getting more interesting. So I wouldn't call me my the ideal customer, and I also opened the bug for him.
So you are the ideal customer.
Yeah. So I thought I did a good job inviting to the Wingley, but since those 3 months, I became a customer and opened the bug for him.
And you're paying $100 a month.
Exactly. So so without any further ado, let's invite Ido. How you doing, Ido?
Hello.
Thank you for joining us, man.
Thank you for hosting me. It's a pleasure. How are you?
I'm good. How was my introduction? Was that a good kind of? Was that what really happened?
One of the best I had.
Awesome, man.
And the longest.
It's the longest, but not that, it doesn't make you blush, which makes it a good intro, right? So it's like you feel comfortable with it.
Yeah, nice, man.
It's a yacht for you.
Yeah, that's man, that's awesome. That's I take the compliment. I hope.
Yeah, no doubt.
So actually, this is really what happened. I was super excited about what you were telling me about how you guys are using Pulumi. I used a little bit of Pulumi only on the side. I didn't kind of went all the way. I feel like there's a gap there. I said that would be interesting to see you guys, and if it interests me, maybe it's going to interest other people. But before, can you talk a little bit about the daily.dev?
Yeah, sure. So daily.dev is a professional network for developers where we scrape content from all over the web, and we create a personalized feed for you based on your preferences, just as Eyal, as you experience yourself. So no matter if you're into DevOps, web dev, whatever, we'll get the news that are relevant for you. Just recently, we even launched a community feature. We called it Squad, so you can even engage with other developers. Nice. You can open groups and share content there. And we started with an AI squad with representatives from OpenAI, Google, and other companies.
Nice. I'm sharing my new. This is basically how I open. This is what I like about this. This is how I open a new tab. Automatically, I kind of installed your Chrome, and this is how I open a new tab. And this is I like this view very much. It gives me kind of a good emphasis. I can do a little bit of scrolling. I really like this view, and I like how it's engaged inside my browsing experience. Really like it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we also have the companion widget. Don't know if you tried it, but when you land on the article itself, we show you like this tiny widget where you can upvote, comment, and so on.
Interesting.
We accompany you throughout your journey, basically.
Interesting. Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
This was the shameless plug. Yeah.
Nice. That was awesome.
Yeah.
So tell us about like the stack. Like, how is this build? Like, what's the architecture?
Yeah. So daily dev essentially started as kind of monolith project, if it makes sense, like almost every project. So we had our React application and our API in Node.js, using Postgres, of course, and Redis for caching, et cetera, et cetera. But slowly,
And hosted where?
hosted on Google Cloud, and once we scaled a little bit on Kubernetes on top of Google Cloud. So as the project grew, and we onboarded more team members and so on, and we had more product requirements to satisfy. We introduced new services, slowly broke down the monolith. Not only we have Node.js, now we also have Go for the more performant and high computational services that we have. For example, feed generation happens on real time, so we do like recommendation system, personalization, everything happens on the fly. So this happens in Golang, and we have other services like our content pipeline and so on.
And all of them are running inside the Kubernetes cluster?
Exactly, and the communication is done via Google PubSub, which is another critical component in our stack, which is like Kafka or any other message queue that you are aware of.
Which is outside of the Kubernetes cluster.
Yeah, it's a serverless solution provided by Google Cloud. It's totally managed. It's not like Postgres.
Yeah. Like SNS.
Yeah, exactly.
SNS, right.
Yeah. So most of our stack is like Postgres, Redis. We also have like Temporal, if you are aware of it.
Really?
Yeah, for workflows, because we have complex workflows that we use for our content pipeline. So we use Temporal for that. And everything is provisioned by Pulumi, basically, behind the scenes.
Is it one deployment? Is it like multiple deployments?
Many different repos. Every repo contains their own like Pulumi code. We have like a central library, which we call Pulumi Common, with all the building blocks that enforces you kind of to our best practices. It includes like horizontal pod autoscaler, PDB, pod distribution budget, pod disruption budget, so to make sure the services are always available. It includes autoscaling for PubSub messaging, so we can autoscale if it's like a background process, we can scale based on the queue, on the PubSub queue, and then if it's the messages are getting pumped up and flooded, then we scale up instantaneously more replicas. So everything is enforced there. So as a developer, I can show you soon. You just need to define kind of your environment variables, the name of your deployment, and so on. You have this function like deploy application, we call it, and everything happens from there. Some applications may have even several deployments, like, for example, let's take one service like our feed service. So there is the feed API, but there is also a bunch of background workers. So every time you push something, it automatically deploys multiple deployments under the same project, because everything is bound to the same source code eventually.
So basically, every repository is a deployment unit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And it's deployed through the Pulumi service?
Yeah, exactly. So everything is like on every commit, on every merge, basically, we have a Circle CI pipeline, which does the tests. It builds the Docker image, pushes it to Google Cloud registry. Then after we are done with that, it runs the Pulumi app process and all the way to the production.
So wait, the Pulumi app, are you using Pulumi's
cloud
offering?
Yeah.
So isn't it doing like the CI also? Only the CD basically.
So their cloud offering, at least as far as I'm aware, it does only like state management for our pipelines.
Really?
Maybe they introduced like CD capabilities, which I'm not aware of, but we do it via Circle CI anyway. So
I see.
um, yeah, when we started, everything was like in beta. So we already have all the infrastructure to do it, and we just move it around from project to project, and it works. So we never look aside.
So do you want to take
It sounds. First of all, it sounds amazing.
No, that's why I brought him here. That's what the pitch I got. That's the pitch I got. I said, "Oh, listen, man. Okay, why don't you tell me more about this in the Winnie?" Exactly.
No, and I think like in contrast, we had the chat today with this guy who just joined this company, and he's like describing how they're working and their architecture, and it's almost a mirror image of like
Exactly.
engineering versus hyper growth company that's like everybody's just like shoving code into like the cloud and trying to figure out like and he's trying to like organize this whole thing. So it sounds like you definitely got it organized.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds good. It has some issues, in real life, you always experience some issues, but overall, as an engineer, you always consider the trade-offs, right? So it was the least worst option, I guess.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So do you want to take us through kind of the developer experience, the DevOps experience? What do you want to take us through?
Yeah, I think what I'd love to showcase maybe it's our local environment solution. So because we provision everything with Pulumi, we used it for the production environment, and then we said, okay, if we use it for production and even for local environment, you still need like your pub sub, you need messages, subscriptions. You need migrations to the database and so on. Before that, we managed kind of Docker composes and stuff like this. It was a mess. We decided to consolidate everything into Pulumi. And so our Pulumi common library kind of abstracts whether you are working from local environment or from production. And you just run Pulumi app for your local environment, and it works kind of the same. As in production.
And so what does it do? Does it like use kind, or it uses
so it uses Tilt, basically.
What's
Tilt, it's like it's a tool for Kubernetes development that creates a bridge between your local environment and Kubernetes cluster. So it syncs the storage. It does auto reload for containers and so on. It's like tilt.dev if you want to check it out. So what happens behind the scenes is when you use our local environment project, so we have like the dependencies layer, which we install on every cluster. This includes the ingress for the traffic. It includes PubSub emulator, Redis, Postgres. All of them are shared throughout the different services compared to like production where we spin up different instances per service. Here in local environment, we try to optimize for the memory and so on.
Again, let me just make sure that I understand this. So basically, there's a shared cluster for development. It's used for development only?
No, you do it in your local PC, like your local MacBook. You run your cluster locally using like Docker, because Docker provides Kubernetes capabilities. Then, I can do it as we speak, and then I can maybe...
let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, so if you can add my screen.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah.
I've done it.
1 second, it's not shown, I think. Can you see it?
Yeah,
okay, yeah, no. Okay, so this is our command line utility to manage your local environment. It's basically bash script, not that fancy, but nevertheless. And so the first thing we want to do when we spin up the environment, we first want to init the stacks. This is like a Pulumi thing that kind of create the ability to store state for this project because it has certain repositories that we are running. So it goes through all these repositories, creates stack for them, so it can store the state for each and every project. Then the next command I want to do is app, and what app does is okay. Yeah, I think my Kubernetes is off. Yeah, okay. Classic live
So
demo.
app is the equivalent of Docker Compose app, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, exactly.
It takes your system and brings it up.
Yeah, let me just turn off my Kubernetes. It will be helpful for this demo to work.
This is from within Docker.
Yep.
You're running on a Kubernetes.
That's new to me. That
I didn't know that was happening.
it's
I didn't know that feature existed.
I don't know if it's a new edition, but it's pretty sick because you install Docker anyway, you get Kubernetes.
Yeah. It's really nice.
Pretty sweet. Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so restart.
Kind.
We init the stacks again. Yeah. And very soon we'll do up. And whatever comes next. 1 second. Okay. So we do up. So
yep.
What's going on? Oh, it did. Sorry. Yeah.
So what's going on? What happened?
Yeah, the Kubernetes didn't spin up for some reason.
Okay.
Let's reset it. I knew it will happen because it's a live demo and it must, it's a...
Of course.
It's
has
there's
to
rules.
There's
rules to the game. I went on a talk and I presented Wing, and the console didn't work for me because I didn't have internet. Now it's supposed to work.
One of the things that we say is that it should work without an internet
when
connection.
It's air-gapped. But there was a bug. Something when there was, I don't know, whatever. So I was trying to jiggle with it, and I think I did a good job.
Let's see if it works. Looks something funky, but we'll see what happens. Okay, it's orange, which is way better than gray than that we had before.
Yeah.
Okay, starting.
Yeah. Bear with it. But basically what will happen when I run up, I can explain in the meantime. So the first step is to provision the dependencies, right? So we mentioned PubSub, we mentioned Postgres, Redis, the Ingress, everything will be provisioned.
So how do you provision dependency? How do you provision the PubSub? Let's talk about that.
Okay, so these dependencies are also being provisioned by Pulumi.
Okay.
So you can see here, this is the Pulumi code. It's written in TypeScript. So here I installed the Ingress controller. I created like functions to deploy the PubSub emulator.
Okay.
You can see it here.
What's the PubSub emulator? Is that like a service that speaks the same API as the Google Cloud that runs locally? Is that
exactly
by Google? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, exactly. It's provided by Google. Not that good of an emulator. If there is anyone from Google in the cloud,
How is it not good? What?
It like fails too often. It's not. You don't have an ability to keep state to it and so on. So on every restart, you kind of need to do the process of provisioning all over again and so on. But I don't know, it does its job. Not the best, but still. Okay, we have Kubernetes running, so let's try again. So yeah, I have these functions.
Ido, just one second. I think you're coming a little bit blurry to me. Is it something?
Oh yeah, it's the camera. 1 second.
Oh, it's the camera because of okay. Awesome, great. Now
high and a little maybe, but maybe more.
Yeah. 1 second. Let's fix the focus right here.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah. This is the problem with like this camera, but yeah.
With high-end gear.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say high end. Yeah, but so yeah, in its stacks, let's do up again on the third time. Third time is a charm.
Right.
So, okay. Finally, it doesn't scream.
Okay.
So you can see that this is like Pulumi log. So it's gonna create ingress controller. It's gonna create a namespace. It's gonna create services for our dependencies, secrets, deployments, and so on. So it's creating them as we speak. And if I'll open my canines, wait, let me open my canines from here. So if I'll open my canines from here, you can see the services start speeding up, right? Not yet, it's still provisioning everything and so on. If we go back here, we see, that because there is L check and so on, it takes a little bit time, but soon it will gather and it will be created. So now it creates the Redis, PubSub, and Postgres, and also the ingress. Hopefully it will go live very soon.
In the meantime, I have a question.
Yeah.
So now you started this environment, it's running on your machine, and now you're going into development mode, right? Like you want to edit some code and push it, and so you're pushing it into the cluster basically.
So I don't need to do any push because of tilt.
Hot reloading.
Yeah, there is hot reload.
So does it trigger what? Just as when you save the file? When does it hot reload? Wow.
When I save the file, it automatically happens.
How long does it take?
Yeah, there is a disk pressure thing on Kubernetes. I knew it would happen, but yeah. How long does it take? It basically our API service, which is like the service with the like longest boot time. It's several seconds, I would say,
nice.
because of the boot time of the service.
Yeah, but that's nice. This tilt thing.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to try and fix whatever issue I have with the Docker pressure thing. I think I used to have it in the past, but I'm not sure I remember how to fix it.
Okay.
Let me see real quick if I can find.
What was the error?
Something with like pressure.
Pressure disk?
Yeah.
Pressure. Okay.
I remember it's something like I have to clean my like Docker storage or something like that. Yeah. We can try and restart the Kubernetes and see if it works. If not, I can just explain it nevertheless. And you'll have to count on me that it works.
Yeah, of course. So how much code reuse you have between your local, the Pulumi code? I mean,
it's the same. From application developer perspective, they don't care. Like they just write their Pulumi code as it is, and it works because of the abstraction layer we had on top of it.
Yeah, but if they add an SQSQ to the application, then
then
it will just work out of the box, right?
Right. So if they had any dependency, which like we never encountered that, right?
So basically, you have like this platform.
Yeah.
And the platform contains a bunch of resources, like it contains a Kubernetes cluster, PubSub, Redis. So that's your platform, and that's a pretty stable thing. It's not changing too much.
Yeah.
And then everything else, which is including all your Kubernetes resources, right? The deployments and the services and everything like on top of that is written on top of that abstraction and sounds familiar.
Exactly, and basically there are some like tweaks that we are doing for local environment. For example, we will not spin multiple replicas. Even if you define like, let's say you say like, oh, this service needs like 3 replicas. Anyway, in local environment it will be only 1.
Right. Makes sense.
Let's try again. I'm probably it will not work because I think I need to run. Delete. But let's see.
Yeah, it used to happen to me a lot with Docker Compose. It's kind of similar when you basically it has its own cache, its own volume for storing kind of Docker cache. It kind of reminds me of something.
How do you test
creating? Yeah.
What do you do during tests, like build tests?
So during test, it's we just run the tests on the CI because we still not in the phase where we have like integration, like proper integration tests with the services. But hopefully, we'll get the results.
So you're saying, just to make sure that I'm saying, so you're saying the test is basically not just, but unit tests for the application code.
With mocks, yeah.
Yeah, with mocks. And for the Pulumi stuff, do you have any testing?
No. We have a preview command that Pulumi provides. It's more like a sanity check, but other than that, nothing.
And on the pull request, do you have preview environments like ephemeral environments that for testing?
Sorry?
When the pull request, when you have a pull request, do you have preview environments on the pull request?
No, only for the front end side. We have a preview environment provided by Vercel, but other than that, no.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I think it actually worked.
It actually worked.
And soon it's gonna kick into the next phase, I believe, which is to spin up the services themselves. Sorry, not the services. First, it's gonna provision all the subscriptions and topics we have. Sorry, only the topics. We have the way we manage our topics. Maybe it's also an interesting point to share. We have like a single repo where we create all the topics on our pub sub. Why? Like we used to manage it per project, but then projects started to depend on each other due to this fact. And we decided to move it outside to a shared repo where everyone, you need a new topic. We have naming convention, you add it there. Then you don't care if someone publishes already or not. It's available for you, it's created.
Because it's a bus, right? And so you want to be able to centrally manage it.
Yeah,
it makes total sense.
Like the problem we encountered is, let's say you want to introduce new topic, right? And this new topic will be the responsibility of service A. This service will publish the topic. So what we had before, this service will also create the topic, but then the subscriber, let's say service B, had to wait until service A finishes their job before you can deploy your job. And we wanted to eliminate this.
But did it really have to wait, or because the topic didn't exist, so it started erroring out? Is that the situation?
Exactly. So
when you listen to a topic, if the topic doesn't exist, it's kind of it tells you can.
It fails. Yeah, deployment fails. You cannot create subscription if it.
Basically, one other way to solve this is to retry, right? Basically. This is in a sense in Kubernetes there's the readiness. It's basically readiness probe, right? It's basically a readiness probe.
Probably for us it was the easiest way to just put it in one central space. What you see here right now is is the services, like the actual services. This is Tilt UI. It's not ours. So Tilt has a Pulumi integration, and so it runs the Pulumi thing, and then once it finishes, it creates the bridge between our local code and our Kubernetes cluster, no matter whether it's like actually local cluster or even remote cluster.
Okay.
It still creates this bridge, and yeah, very soon it will finish. And then maybe it's good that I'll open the UI project so you can see it also. The only thing that we don't run in Kubernetes is our UI, which we run locally, because we had, first of all, in production, it does not run in Kubernetes as well. It runs on Vercel. And the other thing is that we had some issues running it with the auth reload and everything as a container, so we decided just to run it as it is. So I can run it right now.
So basically, Vercel is not part of the Pulumi game.
No. This is the only exception.
Nice.
Okay. So it will. I cleaned my environment before coming to the episode, to the show, to show you the full thing. But once it already was deployed once on your machine, then it's much faster.
Yeah.
So yeah, because right now you see it like takes a couple of minutes and so on. Other things that we also have in this environment is Debezium for change data capture, if you're familiar with.
For what? Sorry?
CDC, like Debezium for change data capture. Basically, on every change we have on the database, it publishes a pub sub message. So it's like external triggers, and then we can do it like removes us the need to do distributed transactions and stuff like that. So we always know that database is the source of truth, and if something is changed, even if I run an admin command on the database, it will still have the impact as if I ran it through the API, basically.
So it's kind of like this reactive API.
Exactly. So the API just saves to the database, and then behind the scenes, if we want to do like Slack notifications, in-app notifications, we want to replicate data between services, we do it with change data capture.
Yeah. So you react to those events in a way. These are
exactly. Yeah. And now we have everything in place. The only thing we need to do is
I always like the concept of reactive programming this way. I never really kind of
build something
software with it, but I always kind of, when I heard this, it's an interesting concept.
It's more like that, it's both this and the fact that, imagine you need to save something to the database and also send an email, or you need or you need to save it in the database and you need to call a webhook or something, or an external service. So what you do you do it like in your API call, you do the same call?
Right.
Then what happens if one of them fails? How do you roll back? And so it saves all this.
It's about whose responsibility it is to perform to perform an operation, and it's like way more scalable in terms of like you can like build multiple. And we talked about like creating event driven primitives into Wing,
like in
so
.NET,
you
like
can .NET has, but for cloud. Exactly, to support these types of use cases, right?
It's kind of a sweet spot between a plain API and event sourced API, which like event sourced is the other extreme. So event driven is kind of more easy to digest solution. So here you can see already I have like a running local environment. I can sign up with like Google even. Let's see. Yeah, I can sign up with Google. I can do all this sort of stuff. I can click, go to the actual article. Here is the like companion thing I talked about. And yeah, you can see like before we had this environment running, we did not have like background workers. Why? Because we simply ran the API and the front end, and that's it. Now, because of the local environment, so we have the pub sub, we have the CDC working. So when I click, we send a bunch of events. Then the UI knows that this one was read, and a lot of other stuff that happens behind the scenes.
Amazing. This is literally the demo that we wanted, that I'm working on.
Yes, it's this is like so Elad kind of posted Wing Cloud kind of 2 weeks ago. The Wing Cloud blog post.
Yeah,
and it's basically describing a system where the developers are able to run stuff locally, test it locally, go through the entire process of kind of how does developer life cycle should look like. And, you were mentioning the other stuff that
like my vision to that, and maybe it will go like a full circle than what you think, is to go back actually to configuration files from code, and to have the code for like the platform engineers or DevOps engineer. But as an application developer, mostly what I care about is very simple things. Like I can show you some of our like deployment stuff. It's very simple. Let me fetch one project. 1 second. So this is a new thing I'm working on, a new service I'm working on. But if you look here, basically you'll see a very, very simple definition of deployment. So it looks intimidating, but it's simple. I'll guide you through and you'll see. So here, like we kind of just want to detect whether it's an ad hoc environment or production. It's a flag that we provide later on. We give it a name. We fetch the image based on configuration, basically the image name. We create a GCS bucket.
Yeah.
We create a Kubernetes namespace.
Okay.
We create
just quick question. When you're creating the GCS bucket, it will create like some local emulation of it when you're running locally?
So this is actually a good example that we are not covering right now in our local environment.
Got it. Okay.
Which is a good point.
Code review comment.
Yeah. So we create a namespace. We create service account, basically for the service to be able to interact with Google Cloud Services. Then we define like health check. So this is a gRPC service. We define the resources for the service. And then this is where like the magic happens. So our library has a concept called application. Application is a series of deployment units. Every unit has a argument that like different arguments that you provide to the Docker image. You can have different environment variables. You can have min replicas, max replicas, different autoscaler, and you can tell it to create a service, and then you send it all over to a function, deploy application suite, and this is what you do as an application developer. Like you don't create the actual deployment, you don't create the service, you don't create PDB, HPA, all this other, you don't create config or secrets or all of that. You don't care about invalidating your deployment in case you only changed configuration. So all this happens in this function. So, and this is why I'm saying the next phase for this is, as a developer, I'm just saying, here is a list of my environment variables. Here are the permissions I need. Here are, I don't know, the buckets I want to create, and just spin it up, do your magic.
Yeah. I mean, what I would do, like as a next step, maybe small next step, is like I would wrap all of this in a class. And expose the right degrees of freedom for all the services. So like look at 3-4 services and say, how am I reusing most of this code and like creating these degrees of freedom? Because I'm sure there's like a lot of copy and paste across multiple services. And so like, and you have the right tools, right? Like you can just do it in TypeScript, right? Like there's nothing.
Yeah, definitely. It's just, it's always, this is what I'm saying. The moment, you, for example, if you'll be able to, at some point, to provide this experience, I'll be, I'll be more than happy to use, because at the end of the day, as a startup, you want to focus on your business value.
Yeah, no, I think you guys built exactly the layers that we're envisioning, right?
Exactly.
Like it's exactly the same architecture eventually, right? Like there's an application uses some abstract cloud resources, and that means that now you can actually deploy this application to different targets. One of them is the local target and the production targets, and I think that one of the interesting things that we're trying to do is, and I don't know exactly, but basically the local target will be mostly in memory implementation, right? Of so you don't need like the pub stub emulator, because your application would work against a very simple high level abstraction for pub sub, which is actually a good example because it is a very simple API, right?
Yeah.
Super cool. Wow.
Really interesting. Really, really interesting.
And highly relevant.
Wow. Yeah.
And you guys have like a really nice system. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
That, it's I think it's at the point. I think that it's well designed, right? Like I feel like it's not trivial to see this in the DevOps space and in the platform space. Like I think like these spaces usually end up pretty messy. So it seems like there's someone keeping the order, which is really fun to see.
I hope so. So far it works. Our developers have some issues with that, especially with Kubernetes running locally. It's not always the most stable thing.
Yeah. Here's something that we're actually debated today.
Right.
Is whether we should abstract Kubernetes as Kubernetes, or whether we should offer a higher level abstraction. So it's not a Kubernetes, it's about basically container orchestration or something that's a bit more high level than Kubernetes. And that means that locally we can actually run these containers ourselves. We don't need a Kubernetes cluster. We don't need to like mess up with kind or whatever. The downside obviously is that it gives the application less degrees of freedom. And then I think the debate is like how many degrees of freedom an application needs when it's deployed to Kubernetes.
Right.
And I think Eyal's point, and you know what, maybe that's the right. I don't think it's such a large surface area, right? Like it needs deployment, it needs a service, it needs an ingress.
Yeah. So basically, we were saying whether this is enough to just basically let's abstract what Kubernetes means for developers. Let's give the entire amount of freedom for DevOps teams to basically kind of implement how the Nifty abstraction looks like inside the cluster, which kind of feels like that's pretty much kind of where you were taking the next step for them. Let's build another abstraction that will basically mask away most of it. And again, it's a question whether it's gonna like every abstraction, it's a question whether
I think especially in the this kind of tools, it's very it's good to go in the abstraction way, but always give the engineer a way to go deeper. Always give them the ability to fine tune whatever they need, because otherwise, I feel it even with our platform that I highly tuned it into like HTTP services, and all of a sudden we needed a gRPC service, and suddenly I had to change certain things, and so slowly you need to open it up for to let developers look into the hood sometimes.
Yeah,
so they
but
will
by
not,
the way, sorry, go ahead. Can you give me your phone, man?
No, I just wanted to say like they'll not like rage quit, because this is the hardest part. Yeah.
But again,
So
I think
I have to interrupt both of you. There's a good reason why I'm the ringleader dictator, as you can see.
first time I heard this.
Yes, this is. So I do. I mean, this can go. Knowing him, this can go for hours, and it's going to stay interesting. So my cue is to stop this while it's still interesting. Ido, this was awesome, man. This was kind of great engineering and great instruction, and somehow you managed to go through a lot of bugs and still show us the entire thing, which was awesome. Thank you for doing this. Very much.
Yeah.
I'll read about you in the daily dev. I'll read about that in the daily dev. Do you have a post? Do you have a post kind of
content
for this to what you're doing?
No, actually, like for the past year, I wanted so hard to write something about so many things, and no time. Hopefully, I'll get some time. Usually, this is why I love to go on shows like this, because it forces you to share. But yeah, whenever I get the chance,
here's an exercise that might work. Take the transcript from this show and try to use generative AI to produce some blog content for it. I think it might work. It will definitely be interesting.
Yeah, I'll give it a try. And anyway, if you want to continue the discussion later on, I'll be happy to share more information, my thoughts, whatever you need.
Great. So thank you very much, Ido.